destroyed. And 30 Jewish men were arrested and incarcerated in concentration camps. British historian Martin Gilbert wrote that no event in the history of German Jews between 1933 and 1945 was so widely reported as it was happening. And the accounts from foreign journalists working in Germany drew worldwide attention. The Times of London observed on 11th November 1938, no foreign propagandist bent upon blackening Germany before the world could outdo the tale of burnings and beatings of blackguard assaults on defenseless and innocent people, which disgraced the country yesterday. And tonight is, well, last night and today is Kristallnacht.
Kristallnacht.
Yeah.
Hello?
You're on mute, Ellen.
Thanks. Thank you, Ruth. I just want to remind everybody that we're knitting and crocheting for the children. We're collecting for Camp Winston gift cards. If anybody would like to support, gift cards for food would be much appreciated, like Harvey's or, McDonald's, that sort of thing, somewhere where they can eat some, there's food involved. And now, Marion, you got a minute to just
Yeah,
speak?
I'll do it very quickly. I just want to remind everybody of our fundraiser that we are in the process. It's ongoing. And we have many items, 2 different water bottles. We have a wine tumbler. They're all nice gifts for Hanukkah. This is the 15 ounce cup, keeps your coffee hot for hours. We have a zipper. This is going very quickly. A zippered umbrella. It comes in a case, and these are flying off the shelf very quickly. And we have a little, I didn't take the battery thing. It's a little flashlight. It's also very popular, our lantern. And to order any of these items from me, you can get me at mvtully@gmail.com or go online and you will see all of the products listed in our shul bulletin, our Shabbat Shalom, and all the different items. So please, we need to have everybody's cooperation and be an ambassador to try to get your friends and family and lots of nice gifts for Hanukkah.
Thank you, Marion. So as I said, seeing as though nobody came to listen to me speak tonight, I would like to hand the floor over to Rose to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Ellen. It is my pleasure to welcome Michael Levitt. Michael Levitt has been the president and CEO of Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center since September 2020. He is also a member of Canada's delegation to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, HRI, where he serves as Canada's voice in the Antisemitism and Holocaust Denial Committee. Before then, he served as the Member of Parliament for York Centre, first elected in 2015 and re-elected in 2019. A first-generation Canadian, Michael immigrated to Canada from Scotland with his mother at age 19. He has a bachelor's degree in political science from McGill University and a a master's degree in science and technology studies from the University of Edinburgh. Before 2015, Michael worked as a partner and vice president of business development for Benjamin Group. He is founding member of the Canadian Jewish Political Affairs Committee, a multi-partisan organization dedicated to activating the grassroots Jewish community in the political process, and has been an active volunteer with numerous nonprofit charities. Michael has served as a board member of the Koffler Center for the Arts, Leadership Sinai, and other organizations in Parliament. Michael served as chair of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development, prior to which he served as chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Busy man. Subcommittee or International Human Rights. Michael was also elected by his colleagues as chair of the Canada-Israel Inter-Parliamentary Group. Michael is a founding member of the Inter-Parliamentary Task Force to combat online anti-Semitism. Michael, we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much, Rose, and thank you to to all of you that have tuned in this evening. Beth David was in my constituency. Can you hear me again? Am I on? I seem to be muted there. I'm on? Okay, people are nodding. I had many great conversations with Rabbi Scheim and got to spend some really good times at the synagogue while I was the member of parliament for York Centre. I've got to cut that bio down. Nobody should have to listen to that much of my that much of my past, but Rose, I appreciate you reading it out nonetheless. It's been quite a journey over the last 25 years, but always good to keep changing things up. So tonight, listen, we heard right off the top about Kristallnacht, and I think that's a very important context for the discussion we're having tonight, because Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, really represented a shift and a wake-up call for European Jews. Things had been bad, things were not good, but things got much, much worse. And that sort of was a point where really it was thrust right out into the open with those, as was mentioned, the pogroms and the beatings, the executions that took place that night as well. It was a really a start of a quick deterioration. And I think it's relevant. First of all, it's Holocaust Education Week. I'm sure many of you have been participating in some of the great programs that Neuberger and other organizations have on. But our past is our present and our future, right? And I think there is cause for concern over what we as a Jewish community are facing right now. Canada, the US, the UK, Europe, and on and on and on. I think globally, we have cause for concern. And we know that especially in rough times, and I think one can say that COVID has been a rough time for all of us in one way or another, that COVID has brought to the surface a lot of the anti-Semitism that I'm going to talk about in the presentation. I think we also know that Jews are, as Erwin Kotler likes to say, the canary in the coal mine. We're the first ones since biblical times to experience the hate as it bubbles up and spreads through society. And I think we need to be very vigilant of where we sit right now. And I think you'll get a sense of that through my presentation. No, the byline on my presentation is the mainstreaming of Jew hate in Canada. The mainstreaming of Jew hate in Canada. Before I start running through the slides, I think it's important to, what is that about, the mainstreaming of Jew hate? Well, I think it's about this. And again, I spent a lot of time as a community advocate and somebody active in the Jewish community, and then somebody that was a candidate in elections, and then a member of parliament. I certainly had opportunity to be very publicly out there with my Jewishness. I was a very public, active Zionist and Jew. And I saw the hate. I saw it because it often attacked me. I had a BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign target me in the 2019 election. And I experienced those sorts of attacks. I was, my colleague Anthony Housefather and I were accused of being more loyal to Israel than to Canada back in 2018, which caused a bit of a kerfuffle in Parliament and in media. So I was out there. Like it goes, it's logical to assume that I would take some of that on the front lines. But I think what we're seeing today is something different. I think what we're seeing at the moment, and I think certainly COVID and maybe even the conflict between Israel and the terror group Hamas, that particular experience back in May into June has brought the hate up. It's rippled up to the surface. And I think the places that we used to see veiled anti-Semitism, it isn't so veiled anymore, is my hypothesis. It's not quite as veiled as it used to be. And people in the workplace, on social media for sure, and we'll discuss social media a bit, mainstream media, academic circles, and we know it's been there in academic circles, right? That's not a shock. But I'll tell you, when we look at the ferociousness, the virulence of the Jew hate that we've seen over the last number of months, it does feel like something different. It doesn't quite feel the same. The openness and willingness of people to be really quite out in front of their anti-Semitism is different. And I think, again, without being alarmist, we have to look back at history and just reflect and be aware. Not ring all the alarm bells, but just understand that anti-Semitism and Jew hate did not end after the Holocaust. It did not. We've seen it, at various times come back, and especially with social media. And I think I've got an article that's probably going up in the Toronto Star in the next hour, and it'll be in print tomorrow. But I talk about social media as a vector of hate against Israel, but really against Jews. When the hate against Israel is manifest as delegitimization, demonization, and a double standard, that is what's called the 3D test. And that's when it crosses from just, casual objection to really anti-Semitism. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing today. All that to say, let me try and share my screen. Ooh, allow Zoom to share my screen. Okay. Uh-oh. Can you see that? Nope, not yet. Okay. Okay, hang on. Got to try and get it. So for some reason, it's not letting me share my screen.
Whoever's the host has to allow participants to share screen.
Oh yeah, maybe that's it. Have I been given?
Co-host?
Am
Are
I
you a
co-host?
Yeah. That's
But
the
you
only way
still
do it.
have to have allow to share screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I do that, or does somebody, no?
Ellen, are you letting him do that?
No, Noreen has to do it because I don't know if I can do it from, I'm not on a computer.
But you're the host.
I don't know. If I make you the host, I don't know. I don't know how to do it from here.
Make him the host, then I think he can do it.
Ellen, I think if you stop being the host, Michael has more choices.
I made him the host.
You made me the
Okay.
host?
I
Yeah.
made you the host.
Yeah,
Don't you love technology?
no,
Okay,
I
let's
hate
try
it.
to-
Sometimes.
I know. Okay. Security and privacy. Man, oh man. And you know, I did another Zoom on this computer earlier today. Okay, hang on. We will not panic. Where there is a will, there is a way. Let's see.
Whose meeting is it? If it's Noreen, then you need to go to your security, I think.
Okay,
And
let's
Jane-
just see.
Okay,
Let's see
so
if this.
what do you
Yeah, no,
want?
no, I think we're that. We're in.
Yeah.
We're in.
There,
Oh.
okay. Yay.
Got it.
Oh,
Got it.
phew.
It's not the first time that, yeah, you know, you never know with these things, right? Okay, so. There we go. So the mainstreaming of Jew hate in Canada. Over the last few months, Canadian Jews have endured assaults, anti-Semitic slurs and harassment, trespassers hanging eviction notices on doors of Jewish homes, right here in the annex, as well as in Ottawa. Vandalism, including swastikas and burning of Israeli flags. Beth Shalom is an example. Harmful misinformation across social media condemning Israel as an apartheid state and a committer of genocide, and one-sided statements from university organizations and school boards condemning the Israeli government with no mention of Hamas. So again, this is this double standard. You've got the Israeli, you've got the state of Israel, which is a democracy, as I like to say, imperfect as it might be. We know it's not a perfect democracy. We know it's not a perfect state. But you've got a terror group bearing down back in May, 4,000 or 5,000 rockets, and yet you would never have known that from the media coverage, never at all. So I mentioned the mock eviction notice, and you can see that here. Sorry, I just want to move this out of the way. I've got this little box here. Let's see if I can put it down there. There we go. You can see the mock eviction notice that was placed on mezuzah, placed over doors with mezuzahs in Toronto and also in Ottawa. You can also see a flag being burned. This was during the crisis back in May, June. You can see this one was in Vancouver. You can see the flag being burned, and there's even worse images coming up. So these were taken. The one on the right with the cars and the swastika circled, that was in London, Ontario. But the one on the left, that was right down at Nathan Phillips Square. Can you imagine on the streets of Toronto, there was over 10,000 people at that anti-Israel rally. And look at the context as we sit here on Kristallnacht. Look at the context of that flag. the Jewish state, the flag of the Jewish state, with a swastika embossed right in the middle. Hateful, right? Really hateful. And I can tell you that at Wiesenthal, we were in touch with police who were at these rallies recording and watching, and there was action that came in the aftermath based on some of the speeches and some of the symbols that were there. We've also seen with the anti-vax movement, we've seen the coalescing of anti-vaxxers and Holocaust symbolism becoming a common sight. So, well, first of all, the one at the top, actually, I just mentioned it. That was Beth Shalom, and the swastika drawn on the shul. But if you look below, on the left-hand side is Rachel Ben-Dayan, my former colleague in Parliament. She was in Montreal. She and one other, there was only one other, well, she and one other Jewish candidate, Anthony Housefather, both had their signs vandalized multiple times, like multiple times, a dozen times, with Nazi hate graffiti, swastikas and other. And you can see the yellow star, and we all know, again, as we sit here during Holocaust Education Week, we all know the symbolism, the meaning of the yellow star and what it denoted for Jews that had to wear it on their way to, death camps. But somehow it's become quite trendy for people, for anti-vaxxers, to trot out this this imagery and this symbolism and make it their own, as if they're suffering like the Jews suffered during the Holocaust. And again, I've written on this quite extensively, and to say that it's offensive is a massive understatement. I think you would probably agree. Conspiracy theories have been around for a long, long time. This was actually recent. One of my staff went down and photographed this downtown on Eastern Avenue maybe a month ago now, and we actually reported it to the Hate Crimes Unit, and they went and did a search of video in the neighborhood. We also saw during the recent federal election anti-Semitic comments by candidates during the election. One in particular, Sidney Coles. Now, I will qualify this because Sidney Coles has since expressed a willingness to learn, and she's apologized and recognized that her own ignorance on the subject, her own lack of knowledge on the subject, and a lack of understanding about the implication of the conspiracy theory she was spreading around Israel basically taking American vaccines. She's come to sort of contemplate that. I haven't met with her directly at this point, but she does seem to be going through a learning process. And at Wiesenthal, that's often something that we look at and actually try to bring about. I'll share with you that over the last couple of days, we had a visit from a gentleman who got caught on video making some really awful comments about Jews and was sort of shamed publicly. And we had an opportunity to sit down and educate and talk and discuss, including with a Holocaust survivor, why those sorts of statements are hateful and hurtful, both. And when there's an opportunity to do that, I think it's really important. It doesn't always come with forgiveness, but I think if there's an opportunity to learn, if there's an opportunity to teach and provide learning, it's an important one. We're continuing to see hate crimes, and the work of B'nai B'rith in particular, who we work closely with, they're just experts in this field at tracking hate crimes, and we've seen them, just rise and rise and rise, and Jews remain the most the social group most targeted by hate crime in the country. 19% of the total hate crimes reported targeted Jews. And after the Black community, Jews were the second most frequent target of hate crimes, followed by the Muslim community and people targeted for their sexual orientation. There's a bit of a sense of the hate crimes reported and how they break down. And you can see that the Jewish community is out in front in terms of hate crime reporting, hate crimes being reported that are targeting us. This is a really important point, and to some it's controversial. Actually, Michael Mostyn from B'nai B'rith wrote on this in the National Post today, and I thought it was very interesting. So the hate is coming from the far left and the far right. It's coming from neo-Nazis, and it's coming from some of the progressive, in quotation marks, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic movements that we see on the left. And I think it's interesting. The Prime Minister at Malmo, there was a Malmo conference on anti-Semitism about a month ago, and as part of his remarks, he talked about anti-Semitism on the left and anti-Semitism on the right, and left-wing groups went nuts. How, left-wing groups were talking about how this was a completely inappropriate comparison, and that neo-Nazis and white supremacists are the problem in Canada in perpetuating hate. And by the way, they are a problem in perpetuating hate. There's no doubt about that. But the notion that the left is only interested in affordable housing and the protection of refugees and food banks really does a disservice to the facts on the ground, because you just have to look at the UK, my former homeland. By the way, I was 14 when I came here, not 19, so the accent's not very strong anymore, but born and raised in Glasgow. You just have to look at Jeremy Corbyn and what British Jews have gone through to understand. You can also look at the Squad, and there is anti-Semitic activity very much alive on the left. Now, why is it important to say that? Because we all know that neo-Nazis and white supremacists, you ask anybody, your next door neighbor, your colleague at work, we know that neo-Nazis are hateful and anti-Semitic. But I'll tell you, you may get more pushback in trying to explain to somebody how some of the progressive movements and some of the movements that are out there defending against racism for other people, some of those movements have at their root a lot of anti-Semitism, and people don't want to. It's a much tougher thing for people to acknowledge. It's a much harder thing for them to get their head around. So I think it's really important that we keep having that discussion. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this relates to what I was talking about before. I'm just going to, okay, so we're good. Anti-Semitism, left and right, new and old, much in common. So blood libels, Jews killing children, Jews as satanic, Jews as a secret cabal controlling global affairs, evoking the Holocaust imagery and symbols, discrimination against Jews as a form of social justice, a way of righting the wrongs of history, dismissing, belittling the use of violence against Jews. I mean, these are things that are old anti-Semitism, and they're new anti-Semitism, right? Blood libels, Jews responsible for the murder of children. I mean, we see these images. I'll run through this quickly. I mean, this is back from the 1300s and a pogrom in Strasbourg, Austria. We recognize these as the kind of images that were Jews as a plague during the Nazi era. But how about this? This is the coronavirus, the Jews as a plague in the current context. Look at it. Doesn't it look so familiar? Doesn't it look like what we just looked at? That's from Germany. This is social media now. You know, look at it. It's all the same images. The Jew is the other. The Jew is evil. The Jew is dirty. The Jew is a plague. The new anti-Semitism, right? When it steers into, instead of being about individual Jews, when it steers to the demonization of the Jewish state, that's when it crosses into the new anti-Semitism. Again, back to those 3Ds. When it delegitimizes, when it demonizes, and when it applies a double standard to the state of Israel, it crosses from fair comment and criticism of a state like you could criticize any other. We spend lots of time, hey, I was a former MP, spend lots of time criticizing the Canadian government. Fair game. But when it gets into this, you know, delegitimization, the state of Israel shouldn't exist. Well, it's interesting that why would people take a position that the state of Israel, the only Jewish state, shouldn't exist? And something interesting that came up in an event we just had, Noah Tishby said it. She likes to challenge people. It's like, okay, well, we hear you don't like this about what Israel does. You don't like that policy. Maybe you don't like settlements, whatever it is. But you want to go beyond that, and you want the state to not exist anymore. What other states don't you want to exist anymore? Do you want Russia not to exist? Do you want China not to exist? Do you want Venezuela not to exist? No. That's not an issue. When it's the Jewish state, all of a sudden we hear this, a delegitimization and demonization of the Jewish state. Online hate. I mean, just craziness in terms of the growth of online hate. I'm active on social media, and I'm out of touch. I'm out of touch because it constantly is spreading and targeting younger and younger and younger. I don't go on TikTok. I don't go on Snapchat, and yet it's rife there, right? So we see these images. We know that the internet has driven a growth in anti-Semitism. We know that hate groups on the left and the right use social media to spread their message and recruit. And there's been a particular uptick in anti-Semitic content since the onset of coronavirus. You know, the account to end all accounts on Twitter, Ayatollah Khamenei, and yet the account's still up, last time I checked. Open calls for the elimination of the Zionist regime and the Jewish people, yet still given a forum. This slide's about Malmo. So the federal government's commitment to combat anti-Semitism, and really it's the work of Erwin Kotler, my mentor and friend for the last 25 years, our special envoy on Holocaust remembrance and anti-Semitism, who is empowered with working to bring about an acknowledgement and an adoption of the IRA definition, which has also become controversial because people don't like being called out on their anti-Semitism. We work a lot with law enforcement. By we, I mean Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center. We work a lot in the advocacy field. We do training for law enforcement. I think there's a slide coming up about that. Hate crimes and the role of police. Very important that our police forces across the country are given the tools to be able to properly investigate and hold perpetrators of hate crime to account. And we actually I did a conference for about 1,300 law enforcement officers from across the country, provincial, federal, RCMP, OPP, military police, called Building the Case Against Hate. And we had experts come in from Christchurch, New Zealand, Pittsburgh, the investigators for the Tree of Life massacre, and other academics to train police. Again, over almost 1,300 police participated in a 2-day program to be able to know how to deal with and handle hate crime targeting Jews, hate crime targeting everyone. Because the reality is that in Toronto, we actually have a dedicated hate crime unit with a most amazing officer that we're in touch with, Detective Kieran Bisla. I think she's actually in this picture. Yeah, she's down there. We have a dedicated force on hate crime, but most cities don't, and of course, most smaller towns don't. So really important, and it's an area that we think is worth spending resources and building relationships. Listen, at universities, I'm sure you've heard it before, but the BDS movement's been active for, well, if I started in that game in like the early 2000s, it's been active since the early 2000s. And I'm not sure, some years the Israel Apartheid Week on campus is big and some years it's not. But we've seen a very disturbing spread, and we've seen hostility, especially during COVID. We've been busy helping med students, at U of T. We've seen the campus dynamics and the campus environment for Jews, both academics, both teachers and students, really go downhill. Oh, speak of the, yeah. So here's a professor at Western who posted the following. Again, you're obfuscating. The heritage and culture of these students is to be Jewish, and this should be celebrated. And it was for hundreds of years until Zionism came. If their culture is Zionism at the expense of the Palestinian people, they should be boycotted and sanctioned. Imagine your professor putting that out publicly on Twitter. So the fact of the matter is that 80% plus of Jews identify as having a kinship with Israel, with the state of Israel, a bond with the state of Israel. Zionism, I mean, that's the reality. That is the reality. And yet here again, he's trying to divide the Jew from the Zionist. And that's not on. Again, when you're saying that Jews in Canada should be targeted and sanctioned and boycotted on campus because they're Zionists, anti-Semitism, plain and simple. This was a York University teaching assistant, if I recall, who sent this out on his, to his class list. Hi, folks. I probably don't have to tell anyone about the inhumane and illegal actions being taken against Palestinian people at the moment. More info here. I will not be holding office hours today. I will not be holding office hours as initially planned tomorrow. I will also not be answering emails. I'll be available to answer, basically he was going on a general strike in support of Palestinians during the conflict between Israel and the terror group Hamas. No mention here. I mean, he talks about Palestinian civilians and the hardship they were having. No mention of Israeli civilians and the hardship they were having. And my position is that the terror group Hamas, in firing 4,000 plus rockets, was creating jeopardy for both Palestinian civilians and for Israeli civilians. And that's the root of it. Clearly not something that he chose to recognize. So we do work with professors and teachers, students, university administrators, school boards to address these issues when they come up. I'm going to flip through these. Partnerships is a big part of what we do. Okay, Holocaust education. So I'm going to run through some of this a little quicker. So one of our most cherished projects and assets is the Tour for Humanity bus. I can't see all your hands, but does anybody know, has anybody been on the Tour for Humanity bus? There you go. So an amazing multimedia bus equipped with screens and now iPads, and it's been made COVID friendly. It's back out on the road for the first time starting next week. And it travels with like a mobile Holocaust education classroom. And we've got trained educators that go on the bus to small towns, to indigenous communities, to rural communities, out east, out west. And we've got a second bus that's joining it in about a month. So this is really a major piece of what we do. We've got 6 full-time educators on staff. We're doing on average 18 to 20 presentations a week. Right now it's 4, 5, 6 a day. And it'll be that way through until the middle of June next year when things break for the summer. And we were busy all summer too. So we do a lot of education in classrooms, obviously through Zoom right now, but with the bus getting out in the road, it's going to be great to actually, be able to engage with the kids directly. I'm going to skip some of this. It's just some of the programming we do. Any of you participated every other Wednesday? We've got one coming up this Wednesday. I think you can find it on our website. And that is our In Conversation with a Survivor speaker series that we run with the Roel Wallenberg Center, with Irwin's Wallenberg Center. And it's stories of survivors. So we have Holocaust survivors, survivors of genocide, Japanese Canadians who were interned, Indigenous survivors of the residential school system. And every 2 weeks, it's a different 1-hour story and testimony from a survivor. It's a really neat program. Okay. I am going to stop there because I think it would be nice to be able to engage in a bit of discussion if you guys are okay with that. But all that to say, listen, I think it's concerning times. I mean, I think I've stated the case for why we are doubling down on our advocacy and our education, because in many cases, Jews in schools, in universities, both as faculty and as students, in workplaces, at social clubs, Jews are not fitting into this woke. We're not being allowed to fit into this woke group. We're being segmented out of that, and the movement in society that is about protecting safe space, which is important, protecting safe space for Indigenous and Black and Asian and LGBTQ and on and on and on, and important to the core. But Jews are not given that same safe space right now. Why? Because we are being lumped in with, as the oppressor, as the colonial settler, as the kind of the power, the powerful. And these are the same messages, by the way, to a large extent, that took place back when the demonization and vilification of Jews started churning away in Europe. It was, well, they're the powerful people, they're this and they're that. So I think we need to be vigilant. We at Wiesenthal, we see a huge amount of importance in collaborating, in partnering with other organizations, with shuls, with great organizations like CIJA and Hillel and Hasbara, depending on who's doing what. We shouldn't all be doing the same thing. And I'm really proud that we've managed to, whether it's in the Holocaust education space with organizations like Neuberger, Azrieli, Yad Vashem, and others, Liberation 75, or in the advocacy space with, as I said, CIJA and B'nai B'rith, or on campus with Hasbara and Stand With Us and Hillel. Very important that we are not being defensive, because as a community, we're facing challenges that require all of us to be pulling in the same direction right now. And with that, I shall be quiet. Question, Marian.
How did the professors and these various people get away with it? Isn't it under the hate law? Because it must be extremely sensitive for Jewish students to sit there. They must be squirming in their seats to hear this. Is it not part of the hate law that they can't say these things?
No, the threshold for hate speech is really, really high. Sometimes it can breach university protocols, but I mean, that's tough sledding on a good day. We've written more letters in the last 6 months to some of these universities than you can possibly imagine. At times it makes it, at times we're able to get traction and sit down with administration. We found that in school boards and in hospitals and other corporations, like we're spending a lot of time right now with corporate Canada. So big banks, Dyson, the vacuums and the hair dryers. We just did a presentation on anti-Semitism to their entire workforce across Mexico, the US, and Canada, maybe 2 weeks ago. So because these corporations now have equity and anti-discrimination programs that their shareholders and their senior management want everybody to know that they're paying attention, one of two things happens. Either on their own volition, they come and they say, oh, we need to cover the Jewish experience, and we want to work with you or CJ or whomever, and we go in and we kind of tailor a presentation. What's been happening quite a lot in some of those corporations, none of the ones I named, but some others, is that Jews in the workplace see that there is active discussions and programming going on about anti-Black racism and Asian racism and and Islamophobia and on and on and on, and yet nothing, silence about the Jewish experience. And often they'll come to us and say, what's going on here? And we'll reach out, and it gets a conversation started, often quite well. So sometimes it's proactive, sometimes it's reactive, but really important discussions come from those, because quite often it's just a lack of understanding / ignorance and not maliciousness that causes sort of the Jewish space not to be considered. Other times it's not quite that.
Are there programs being done in the universities with students?
Yes.
Explain all these.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is, and there's some really good organizations that are doing that work specifically at a student level. I mean, this summer we had to get engaged with U of T med school students and also dental students from a couple of different campuses who faced a torrent of hate in the aftermath of the conflict with Hamas, and they weren't equipped. First year, second year med school students are equipped to study lots. That's what they're focused on. They're not political. They're not advocacy. They don't have advocacy in their backgrounds most often. They're focused on and it just turned really nasty really fast. So in the background, we went and provided them support, and we're able to cool the temperature down a little, give them some kind of sober second thought on how to approach things. But can you believe that's the reality of our students on campus? It's really, really concerning. I can't see all the hands because I'm only on one page. So just speak up if you've got something to say. No? Okay.
Okay, Michael, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for explaining what you do every day and spending the time with us, educating us. And I think I have to pay more attention to your newspaper columns. It was a real learning experience. I come from a small Ontario town, and there was sort of hidden anti-Semitism there. And then I came to Toronto, and I learned so much about being Jewish because I'd never seen so many Jewish people in my life when I came here. But I think we all need to learn, keep learning, do our best. And you have certainly given us direction for that. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very, very much again. Beth David was always very warm and welcoming to me. I refer to myself now as a recovering politician. So during my non-recovery days, Beth David was always a really welcoming place. So I'm glad I'm able to come and join you this evening. And Rose, thank you for the liaising back and forth and doing that hard work. And guys, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very, very much. That was very interesting, and yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.